I am Sukalyan Sengupta, the Director of the Center for Forensic Studies, and it's indeed my great pleasure to welcome you all. I know this is a very, very busy time of the semester. In fact, we are in practically the last week of classes. Our finals begin next week, so many of my colleagues had to juggle and switch around different commitments to be here, and I really appreciate that. In fact, one of my colleagues had a trip to Germany, which was supposed to happen today, but because of this event, he's going tomorrow. So I really appreciate that, and especially the students who are, of course, much more worried in their academic commitments than we are. So I welcome you all again. We will now officially welcome our chief guest, Consul General Sri Sandeep Chakraborty, who is the Consul General of New York, the Indian. So I would request Deepshika to present the occasion. We are very fortunate to have Mrs. Chakraborty also with us. So I would like to welcome her to our campus. Juhi would like to present her memento. Juhi.
It is my pleasure to greet our guests today from India to our campus. On behalf of Chancellor Johnson, I offer my greetings to the honorable visitors and everyone else who are present at this luncheon. UMass Dartmouth is a Tier 1 national research university that continues to attract students as well as faculty from not just Massachusetts, but all over other states as well as from different countries of the world. This year, as we grew our total enrollment by 1.2%, its year-over-year number of freshman students who came from outside of Massachusetts grew by 48%. A few weeks ago, when I greeted international students from 27 countries this year, Azerbaijan to Zimbabwe, and I want to kind of note, as of this morning, I checked with the international office, we currently have 277 active students from India on F1 visa, 8 dependents on F2As, no Js, and we have about 11 faculty members from India. And yes, we would welcome a lot more from India. This September, as an example, we joined hands with IIT Kharagpur. UMass Dartmouth is a place that respects diversity and tolerates discourse. And by your presence in our midst, we are all enriched by the mere presence of yourself and our international students body. It would be quite appropriate for me, and not to remiss if I didn't quote, the father of American literature, Mark Twain, born shortly after an appearance of Halley's Comet, who predicted that he would go out with it. And surely he died the day after the comet returned. Mark Twain had an opinion about too many things, actually everything. He observed, and I'm just going to quote this, India is the cradle of the human race, the birthplace of human speech, the mother of history, the grandmother of legend, and the great-grandmother of tradition. Our most valuable and most instructive materials in the history of man are treasured up in India. Now, some of you may agree or not agree with Mark. I'm not going to debate him. Not surprisingly, India represents the world's largest and contiguous civilization. An offshoot of the Indus Valley civilization that was based and located around Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. There are 461 mother tongues in India, out of over 6,900 worldwide. And yet, India is the second largest English-speaking country in the world, with 125 million people speaking actual English in India. India is also one of the largest democracies in the world. And as of 9:30 a.m. today, I checked, India's population just surpassed 1,360,408,650. That's at 9:30 a.m. Speaking of innovation, India has the largest postal system, if I can recall, in the world. More than 150,000 post offices, which is 3 times that in China. And I don't know yet if you know, in India, even the elephants go to spa. They receive baths, massages, and even food at the Panathur Elephant Rejuvenation Center in Kerala. Honorable guests, UMass Dartmouth looks forward to very productive partnership with its Indian counterparts in education and research. Thank you very much, and I welcome you to this campus. I know I'll be running out because I'm going to another event, but I want to thank you very much. I just want to tell you, we have excellent students. We want more of them. We have excellent faculty. We need more of them, and I hope with a partnership with you, we will reach this goal. Thank you so much. And by the way, while walking over here, he and I traded a little secret, right? So I asked, are you really from this particular place? He said, yes. Then I said, I think we went a little farther. I said, where are you from? And he said, I'm from this district. I said, can I speak this language? He said, and I responded in kind. Thank you very much. And I told him I'll show up in 68th Street, right? 68th Street because I need to extend my tenure visa to India. It's about to start. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So I'm very pleased to introduce again the Consul General now as our seminar speaker, Sandeep Chakravarti. He's a member of the Indian Foreign Service. He's been a member since 1996. He has served in India's missions in several countries. Before coming to New York, he was the ambassador of India to Peru and Bolivia. He has also been India's deputy chief of mission to Bangladesh. As he said, he comes from a part of India where the language that is spoken is also spoken in a district in Bangladesh. So, in India's Ministry of External Affairs, he has held several positions, public press relations officers, desks dealing with Central Asia, East Asia, China. I would just like to mention for some of you who may not know, the India's Foreign Service IFS is a really very selective organization. We are in the midst of college admissions applications. December 31st is the deadline for many universities. And every year we complain that our acceptance rate in these prestigious universities is dropping. So right now, the lowest I have heard is about 6% acceptance. But if you compare it to the Indian Foreign Service and India's Administrative Service, the IAS, IFS, it still is much higher. Because for that exam, that IAS, Indian Administrative Service exam, I mean, hundreds of thousands of people take it, and then only a very few of them make it to the next round. And within the Indian Administrative Service, IFS, the India Foreign Service, is at the pinnacle. And I heard from a diplomat, and I'm sure, Consul General, you can corroborate, that originally, after India became independent, when India Foreign Service was first established, our then Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, whose book, The Discovery of India, we have in our collection today, he personally used to select the diplomats for the IFS. So he was that much invested in this. So it's a very prestigious public service organization of India government. But before joining the IFS, Mr. Chakravarti worked with civil society organizations dealing with natural resources, environmental issues. So as you can see, we have very few data points, but people who deal with environmental issues or environmental sciences or environmental engineering, they typically become very smart, right? Anyway, if you didn't get the joke, that's perfectly fine. So, Ambassador Chakravarti has a master's degree in advanced studies in international security from Geneva University, master's degree in sociology, and he graduated in physics. So he comes from a science background, which many people in the Indian Administrative Service do. So with that, I would invite Ambassador Consul General Chakravarti to give his seminar on India-US relations. It will be about 20-25 minutes, and then it will be followed by Q&A. Ambassador?
Professor Sengupta, and my regards to the Provost to leave, and thank you very much for being here. I was quite impressed by the Provost's speech because he also in a way is an inheritor of India's civilization legacy, being originally from Bangladesh. And what he didn't tell you is that we share a secret tongue, you know. If we speak to each other, none of you in this room would understand. We have a common language, which is known as Sylheti, which is spoken by a large number of people in eastern India and in Bangladesh. So, in the short walk from his office to this place, we discovered each other. But it's interesting, he was mentioning Mark Twain. And Mark Twain was very influential in his time in the United States. And I read somewhere recently, and it's not apocryphal, that he was so important that once his publisher went to meet with the President of the United States and asked him to defer the Thanksgiving holiday because Mark Twain wanted to celebrate his birthday. So imagine the influence Mark Twain had. I wish writers and authors in today's world had that kind of an influence. I think the world would have been a very much better place. I will just refer to the Provost's remarks in the sense that he mentioned about the diversity of India, and I think the collection that we have put together as the India Corner in your library quite nicely represents our diversity in terms of regions, in terms of languages, in terms of thoughts, ideas, and I think that's why it would be a very valuable addition to the Indic Center library. I am aware of the Indic Center thanks to our common friend Dr. Balram Singh, who in his new avatar has become more energetic and more active. I haven't seen a person of his age so spirited and so active. And to let you know another secret, we have been working on several projects together. In fact, last weekend he was in the consulate working with some of our friends on a project to mainstream study and research of yoga and Ayurveda in the United States. So that's something we've been working. But I knew about his work with the Indic Center, and I'm very impressed with the Indic Center. I just want to say that we in our consulate try to maintain relations and connections with various universities in this part of the world, primarily because they have a large number of Indian students. Students normally don't need us unless they are in some difficulty or trouble, which I think is a happy state of affairs. So if we don't hear from you, that's always good news. But I just want to say that if you need some help or support, particularly when there is a difficulty, please feel free to connect with us and approach us. We have on all social media platforms, our handle is India in New York, so you can reach us and come to know about what all we do. Apart from that, we are supporting Indic or Asian or South Asian study centers in various ways. We organize conferences, seminars, we invite eminent persons, we also organize visits by professors to India. So we could work on a plan with the Indic Center in UMass and see UMass Dartmouth and see what we can do together. Earlier, I know my predecessors used to come here, but the relationship has been episodic, now off and on. But what we would like to do is to have a continuous dialogue and interaction. Because we have the resources, India is now open to doing business, the economy is doing well, more and more students are coming here. There's a lot of interest in universities in the United States to do business with India, whether it is internships or study abroad or bridge year or research. Wherever I go in all universities in our region, including the Ivy Leagues, there is a great deal of interest. Many of the universities have set up India centers in India. I would invite UMass Dartmouth to look at that, because at the moment our law does not allow foreign campuses, but the law will change hopefully soon, and then the people who are already there, they will be best placed and better equipped to take advantage of our educational market. if you one can describe it that way. Because India is the youngest country in the world. 70% of our population is below the age of 35. There is a great deal of demand for quality education, which unfortunately our India-based institutions are not able to cater to because of the enormity of the demand. That is the reason why many Indian students come to the United States. But there is a great deal of demand for quality education in India and opportunities for research, etc. So I would strongly encourage this university to look at India more closely, because there is a lot of potential in India. There is a lot of money to be made in India. There is a lot of work that can be done in India. And the Indian economy, the way it is growing, it will be the third largest economy in the world in the next couple of years. And after a few years, there will be just 3 stories in town: China, India, and United States. So we need to interact more in a positive manner with each other, because we will be basically having half the world GDP. So these are interesting times for India, interesting times for India-US relationship, and education is a pillar of that relationship. Historically, there has been a great deal of exchange of ideas between India and United States, and right now there is a continuing exchange of ideas and a lot of exchange taking place in terms of research, in defense, in high-tech research. So all in all, I find the future very promising, and I'm very happy that the Indic Center is rightly placed. Quite impressed with your activities, and we will be happy to collaborate. I just want to end by thanking all of you. I was not aware this end of semester here, and all are very busy in your examination schedules. But thank you for inviting me and for being here. I really appreciate. And if there's anything we can do from the consulate, please feel free to connect to us. I'm going to speak on India-US relations, and somehow I'm feeling a bit small, because all of you around in this room have been part of that relationship. I've been talking to so many of you, and you have come here in 1978 and 75, and you have seen the ups and downs of the relationship. So it is, I feel a bit inadequate now talking to you, because you live that relationship. You have come here. You have been in some ways the vehicle of that relationship. But anyway, since my job is to promote this relationship, to support this relationship, I would like to give you an overview of how it has evolved over the years and how it is looking now. The India-US relationship, as most of you in this room know, it has not been a very happy tale. It has been in the past a relationship of considerable stress, but it has evolved. And I think what we celebrate today is a transformation of that relationship. So I will tell you this tale of transformation, how India's relationship with the United States was, and how it looked over the years, and how it is today. I think that is will be the essential thrust of my talk today. I will also identify what led to the transformation. So I have identified, or authors and analysts have identified basically three attributes or 3 factors which have led to this change. So one is structural, which I will explain what I mean by structural. One is India's domestic policy, and which again I'll explain what I'm talking about. And the third is leadership. Leadership is easy to understand. We have had leaders both in the United States and India who have shepherded and led this transformation. So in my talk, you will find me dealing with these 3 factors. Now, how old is the relationship? India-US relationship. How old is it? Now, I am not talking of Columbus trying to find the route to India, or 1492. I am not talking of Hudson trying to find the route to India. He thought the river would take him to India in the early 17th century. I am not talking of that also. I'm also not talking of the Boston Tea Party, the colonial traders getting very upset that British denied them the. Most of us don't realize this. There's an Indian basis to the American Revolution, which is that the colonial traders were said you can't deal directly with India. You have to deal with the British merchants, and then the British merchants. So that led to a lot of resentment, and then boxes of tea were thrown in the Boston Harbor. In 1792, it was President Washington who nominated a person called Benjamin Joy to be the consul in Kolkata. So he is perhaps the first American consul to anywhere in the world. There is some debate that the first American consulate was in Guayaquil in Ecuador, but others say it was in Kolkata in 17. So Benjamin Joy reached Kolkata in 1794, and he was not allowed to become a consul in the proper definition of the term, because the British didn't want him to be there. Because immediately after American independence, the British didn't want an American hanging around in Kolkata. But he was given some permission to operate by the British East India Company, and he was, I quote, he can reside here as a commercial agent subject to the civil and criminal jurisdiction of this country. So Benjamin Joy and the US consulate in Kolkata is since then, 1794. You can imagine the antiquity in the relationship. So what happened was, since then, this trade commenced between India and the United States. There are a lot of stories about this relationship. We know ice used to go from somewhere here up in northeast New England to Chennai to Kolkata. We know that Yale University was financed by Mr. Yale, who made a lot of money in his trade with India. We know that Thoreau was influenced by Bhagavad Gita. His book Vanden had a lot of references to Bhagavad Gita. We also, so this is India getting influenced by America, but also we have had Indians who have influenced the United States. The first Indian cultural ambassador was Swami Vivekananda. We all know about him 125 years back, 1893. Then we had in the early 1900s, Tagore came and he mesmerized the American elite society in New York and other cities of India, of the United States. And then came Swami Paramahansa Yogananda and his book, Autobiography of Yogi. I think it's one of the most influential books. I think one of the all-time bestsellers. And even today you will find that book in bookstores, and it still has an impact on Americans. Then we had Srila Prabhupada, ISKCON movement. And I think ISKCON, it's not researched and it's not understood to that extent. But I think ISKCON's influence on transforming foreigners' life and American life, it is incredible. The way ISKCONites and followers of the Hare Krishna movement have changed themselves is amazing. Then we had Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. He brought modern yoga to the United States. And but you may have realized that many Americans are bewildered when you tell them that yoga is from India. It has become so American yoga that people believe it originated somewhere here. And I think yoga is a very good example of Americanization of an Indian cultural import. So these exchanges were taking place in the past, and there is later on during the freedom struggle we found a lot of support. In the United States, we know that President Roosevelt didn't approve of British colonial methods in India, and he told many times Winston Churchill that you have to solve the problem of the colonies and particularly India. And Gandhi was very much influenced by Thoreau, and Thoreau's ideas of civil disobedience actually were adapted to India, and in Gandhiji Satyagraha derived heavily from Thoreau's civil disobedience, concepts of civil disobedience. Then when we got independence, our constitution makers were heavily influenced by the American Constitution. So you see all these things are happening before independence. But immediately after independence, everybody expected that the oldest democracy and the largest democracy, they will connect very well and everything will be nice and happy. But it didn't happen that way, and that is because of the Cold War dynamics. And so from 1947 onwards, India and the United States cooperated, but it was episodic. On some issues we were together, on others we were not together, and there was never any great deal of warmth in the relationship. And there were many incidents which proved that that we were not on the same side. I'll give you a few examples of cooperation. United States supported India's Green Revolution. 1963, Dr. Norman Borlaug. Within 10 years, India became from a food deficit country to a food surplus country. Before that, United States supported us with food. US supported us during the Chinese aggression. On Tibet, we cooperated. But unfortunately for India and for the United States, the preferred partner in South Asia was Pakistan. Now, that is because of the geopolitics of Cold War. We had two blocs, Soviet Union and United States, and Pakistan was willing to play the game with the US against Soviet Union, and we were not. We thought ourselves that we had just come out of the colonial experience. We didn't want to ally with anybody, and we were also champions of what is known as non-alignment. Then in 1971, the Bangladesh War happened. Again, in the Bangladesh War, we were not on the same side with the United States. The United States denied that there was genocide in Bangladesh, and we fought basically the war on our own, and so that left a deep mark on our psyche. That even on a very justified cause, we didn't get the support of the United States. Things deteriorated further. In 1974, we had our nuclear explosions, and United States always had a very strong non-proliferation agenda. It didn't want nuclear weapons to proliferate, and we had a nuclear explosion. So there was a lot of backlash to our nuclear explosion, and the United States came up with the architecture of technology denial regimes, so that countries like India do not get access to high technology. And something like the Nuclear Suppliers Group came in 1974. And then in 1978, we had the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which was again designed to exclude some countries, particularly India, from being declared a nuclear power. So we had a world of haves, nuclear haves and have-nots, and India was nuclear have-not. And certainly, as you can understand, we were not very happy with that. Then even further, Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. That again created a lot of bitterness between the two sides, because India had a friendship treaty with the Soviet Union which came up during or before the Bangladesh War, and we would not criticize Soviet Union openly. So that again created some kind of a difficulty between the United States and India. Now, so I have given you the picture till let's say the 80s. So how do you describe this state of affairs between India and the United States? How do you encapsulate it? So there was a US diplomat, his name was Dennis Cutts. He wrote a book in 1994 which described the India-US relationship from 1941 to 1991, 50 years of India-US relationship. And he called it estranged democracies. We were democracies, but we were not engaged, we were estranged. Now, estrangement, however, happens between partners, and so there's some optimism there. It's not a lost case, because you may have been there is some affection in between the two, but they are estranged. So this is the way I would also describe our relationship till the early 90s. Then something dramatic happened in the world, which is the dissolution of the Soviet Union. And that really was the structural change that I was mentioning. The structure of the world changed. We had two blocks, and now we have only one block, and we had one predominant superpower. And at the same time, more or less, domestically also we changed. We changed our policies. India had a socialist orientation. before 1991. From 1991, we started market reforms, we opened our country. So two things happened at the same time. Structurally, the world changed, the geopolitics of the world changed, and India opened up. So this unleashed the economic potential of India, and the United States took notice as India's rising economy started to interest US corporates and policymakers. However, in the 90s, Pakistan continued to remain the preferred partner in South Asia. Because of the turmoil in Afghanistan, the United States thought that the key to the problem in Afghanistan, maybe it still thinks, and the key to the problem in Afghanistan lies in Pakistan. So, United States was thinking at that time that it could do business with the Taliban, but we were viscerally opposed to the Taliban, and of course things did not work out, unfortunately, and our relationships also did not take off. So from the 90s we come to 1998. So what happened in 1998? Any guesses? Pokhran 2, nuclear explosion. Now from the first nuclear explosion 1974, our relations really deteriorated. Again 1998 we had nuclear explosions, and the United States reacted very severely and imposed sanctions on India. However, it is a very important event and episode. From there, from those sanctions, from the nuclear explosion, our relationship really took off, and I will explain how and why it happened. Because the United States, under the leadership of Bill Clinton, realized that India as a nuclear weapon state was too important to be ignored. So it had to deal with India. Also, Indian economy started taking off. We were growing at the rate of 7, 8, 9%. And there were these two factors which pushed the United States. So within months, sanctions were lifted from India. And we started talking. There was a huge or large amount of exchanges that took place after 1998 between India and the United States. And Bill Clinton played a critical role in that from the United States side. And from the Indian side, it was Prime Minister Vajpayee. So these two leaders, then started talking to each other, and they realized that, the changed circumstances in the world, with the Soviet Union no longer existing, with India opening up its market, India now becoming a nuclear weapon state, there was no reason why the United States and India could not deal with each other. So this is the spirit behind this hybrid engagement that took place post 1998. And it has continued. We had, after Bill Clinton, we had President George Bush, President Obama, and now President Trump here. And on the Indian side, we had Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, and then Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So I was talking about this engagement between India and the United States. So from our side, it was our External Affairs Minister Jaswant Singh, and from the United States side, it was Deputy Secretary of State Stroke Talbot. They met 14 times in 7 countries to discuss the entire gamut of a relationship, from security issues to non-proliferation to economic cooperation. And there was a dramatic turnaround in the relationship. The best example of this turnaround is the Kargil War of 1999, when it was the first time the United States supported India in a war against Pakistan. This was the first time ever. And the United States told Pakistan to withdraw its forces. If you remember, Nawaz Sharif was summoned to the White House and told that you have to withdraw, and he went back and he had to withdraw the forces. So that gesture on the part of the United States was very welcome in India, and it opened up our hearts, and we were then eager to deal with India. It led to the transformational visit by Bill Clinton to India in 2000, March of 2000. And this 50 years of estrangement came to an end. So if you look at the India-US relationship, many people will say it's 70 years old since India became independent in 47. To me, it is not 70 years old, it is only 18 or 19 years old. Because the real relationship started happening where there was open-hearted exchanges between the two sides. Only started happening from 2000 after the Bill Clinton visit. So this is the chronology of the story. Now I will add some other elements to the story. One is, in the late 90s we had the Y2K problem. So we are all aware of what happened in Y2K. Now, where could you find qualified English-speaking engineers in large numbers to solve the problem in the world? There were not enough engineers in India, and there was no other country in the world which could meet this demand. So Indian engineers in large numbers flocked to the United States to deal with this Y2K problem. Now, very significant data I will give. In the 60s and the 70s, Indian immigration into the United States was 300 in a decade. In the late 90s and 2000 onwards, it became 300 a day. So you can imagine the transformation or the change in the number of Indians that started coming to the United States and the size of the diaspora. So by the early 2000s, our diaspora was about 1.5 million. Now people like you, played an important role in this relationship because you were, or people like you in Northeast and in California and other Chicago, in Atlanta, Houston, etc. They started playing an important role in convincing their representatives in state legislatures and in the Congress that we need a healthy and strong relationship with India. So that is one factor which I bring to your attention. The other factor which also cemented our ties is a very tragic reason which occurred. That is 9/11. India had already known terrorism and international terrorism, its cross-border dimension, but we were not able to convince the world. We were perhaps the only victim of cross-border terrorism in the world. Then 9/11 changed all that. We all became victims of terror and we were on the same side. In a very unfortunate way, terrorism was brought transatlantic and hit America at home. So I think the kind of understanding and bonding that this tragedy created between the two countries has gone a long way in bringing our two countries together. So since the early 2000s, our relationship has taken off. We have not looked back. The India-US nuclear deal happened in the mid-2000s, I think 2008. The US agreed to terminate all these technology denial regimes that had been put in place, and India could or started gaining access to technology from the West. So, where is our relationship now? Our relationship is at a point when Prime Minister Modi, in his address to the US Congress in 2016, said, the two countries have overcome the hesitations of history. Now, you may say, what were the hesitations of history? The reason that I explained before, that what happened in the past. And President Trump said, the relationship between India and US has never been stronger, has never been better, that we can be designated as a major defense partner by the United States, that India can be designated as a major defense partner by the United States, that we can be actually conducting more military exercises with the United States than with any other country. We are now proclaimed to be the other Asia bookend of stability in the Indo-Pacific. India is now seen as a huge market, a large middle class of about $500 million by 2025. India is a source of professionals, source of investment, and many other things. So, in addition to the factors that I mentioned, which is the Indian diaspora, what happened in 9/11, the changes that happened, structural leadership. Another important reason is the way our societies are. Both United States and India are multi-religious, multi-ethnic, multilingual societies. We have shared values. We have both a democracy. So I think there is a great deal of comfort in dealing with each other. And since then, our diaspora has grown. It has become almost 4 million now. So they have, infused ballast and a lot of dynamism in the relationship. So that is an important factor. Our diaspora, our shared values, and that both India and the United States have learned to engage with India. Now, India matters for the US and US matters for India. I will now just run through quickly some statistics which will validate what I have been saying. So, our trade grew from 20 billion in 2000 to 126 billion in 2017. So you can imagine how much transformation is taken in the trade relationship. Two-way investment is around 45 billion. USA is one of the top 5 investment destinations from India. You know, the general impression is that US invests in India, but now the story is changing, the narrative is changing. Indian companies are investing in India, in the United States. Our estimates is that 100 Indian companies have invested more than 17 billion in the United States in the last few years. And they create more than 113,000 direct jobs in the United States. Our students in the United States have doubled in the last decade, from 81,000 in 2008 to 186,000 in 2017. I believe this year the number has grown to more than 200,000 Indian students in the United States. And in 2017, our students contributed $6.54 billion to the US economy. At the same time, Indian professionals have been part of the US economic ecosystem. Our guest workers on H-1B visas, etc., academicians, professors, they add value to the US economy. Now, how do you define our present relationship? We call it global strategic partnership, and we are doing things which normally allies do. You know, for instance, India has been designated as TSR1, which is it's called Strategic Trade Authorization Tier 1 license exemption, which is given to only NATO members and allies. India is the only non-NATO, non-ally country to get that authorization. So what I'm saying is that we are doing military exercises, we have a strong defense relationship, we have this strategic trade authorization, we have all the barriers to technology have been removed, we have been designated as a major defense ally. So we are doing things with the United States together which earlier were totally unimaginable. So this is the transformation that I am talking about. The United States also realizing the importance of India in its strategic vision has renamed its Asia-Pacific Command as Indo-Pacific Command. So there is great deal of India now in its strategic planning as far as the Pacific or East Asia is concerned. Now, despite what I have said, the all-encompassing nature and the diversity of a relationship, I believe that we are just scratching the surface. There's much more that can be done, particularly, as I mentioned before, in the education sector. Because India is growing fast and India is in the throes of economic reforms. Some major things have happened recently, the goods and services tax, then the insolvency and bankruptcy code. The Indian economy was never a unified economy. Our economy was divided into states. In the reforms that have happened in the last couple of years, India has become a unified market. It is the largest unified market in the world. It is twice the size of Europe as a common market, or maybe 3 times the size of Europe as a common market. So therein lies the incentive for cooperation. Therein lies the interest of US policymakers. Therein lies the interest of US corporates. And also India is becoming digital. Again, there is a great deal of connect. The United States is a digital economy. India is becoming a digital economy. There is a great deal of interest of US companies and corporates in India because of our digital connect that is happening in India. I will end by saying that not everything is so rosy. There are challenges. I will mention 3 challenges. One is our trade policy. There is a lot of negotiations going on trade. The emphasis and focus of the current administration on trade. So India is also part of that focus. So there is negotiations going on. So we are optimistic that we will be able to resolve the trade issues. There is also the issue of sanctions on Russia. And sanctions on Iran. India has, due to historical reasons, strong relations with both Russia and Iran. So we need to know how to deal with that, because it will be not possible for India to overnight, truncate or cut those links. So we are talking to the United States, and there is great deal of understanding in the United States on our concerns and our problems. So we are talking to this. These are the three challenges that I see readily, staring at us. But we know how to deal with them. We are dealing with them. On the whole, I would summarize by saying that the relationship has never been better than before. There is a lot of substance in the relationship. There is a lot of engagement and different forums, private sector, educational institutions, government to government, people to people. So everything that you look forward in a close relationship is there between India and the United States. And the change geopolitics of the world is also pushing us together, and I think that is something we'll see how that navigates in the coming years. So I will end by saying that this is in a broad sweep about how things have materialized between the two countries since our independence and even before that. But the last 18 to 20 years have been very, very critical and important, and many of you have witnessed it from very close. I have only been here for about a year or so, so my knowledge is secondary, but all of you have been participating in this relationship. And thank you very much. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Our relation with Pakistan and how that United States plays right now, because Pakistan has been one of the difficult situations for India for a long time. How is that changed in the recent administration?
I will not describe that our relationship with Pakistan is good because of the way the state is. We have tried to mend our relationship with Pakistan, but very frankly speaking, we have not succeeded because the way the state is structured, where it is a military state, it's an army-driven agenda. The foreign policy is driven by the army. What we appreciate is this understanding that is now emanating from the United States, that Pakistan has basically taken the world for a ride, and the United States for a ride, and it has only paid lip service to what the United States demanded. So you have seen the proclamations of the administration. President Trump has spoken very loud and clear this year, and Secretary Pompeo. And everybody is understanding that Pakistan has not done what it always said it has done. It has what is it called? Run with the hare and hunted with the wolves. It has done this thing. Run with the hare and hunted with the hounds or the fox. So it has tried to do that, but one day everybody will call you bluff. And I think we have understood that. So we are our relationship with Pakistan is a relationship of containment of damage. We try to see what less damage they can do to us. That is the way it is. And we are hoping of change, real change within Pakistan, not cosmetic change which we see sometimes. And I think the United States understand that, the world understands that. And so this is a challenge for the world, for India, for the United States, on how to deal with Pakistan. I don't think we very clearly know. It is work in progress.
Number of students in 2018 has been around 200,000, whereas in 2017 it is 155,000, something like that. Whereas I think that it's coming down rather than increasing, right?
No, I believe that in 2017 there was some fear that it is decreasing. But I have figures from this year which were more than 200,000, from 186,000. It depends on the campus. In some campuses they say our numbers have declined, and others they say. But I think you said the numbers have increased here in Dartmouth.
Not on our.
Not on your campus. But in other campuses they have. In fact, what we are now observing is that earlier only master students used to come. Now we find even undergraduate students are coming. That is a very recent phenomenon. Earlier it hardly happened that people came for undergraduate engineering or undergraduate liberal arts. But in many campuses that I visit, I find Indian students in undergraduate courses. So the numbers have not declined. There was a fear that because of this visa issue, numbers would decline. But the data that we have got from the US State Department says that it has not declined.
No, it is not fear, it is true. It is not fear. Actually, the numbers came down for the master students. I don't know.
No, that is on our campus, you are saying.
In all the campuses, yeah. No, not only in our campus, across. I think we may have to see.
I can share with you the data. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Very nice summary presentation. Just one information: the boat or the ship from which the tea was thrown away or thrown off was named Dartmouth.
Oh,
And that was built here in Westport, nearby town, and that was named as Dartmouth. So the Center for Indic Studies in Dartmouth is very justified.
yes, of course. It's a nice nugget.
One of the things that I have made observations between here and in India, there are a lot of things very opposites. For example, day and night, with targets. Left drive in India, right drive here. Which, maybe British language. But the switches in India, when you turn on switch is down, and in America it's up. The fountain water there is down and here is up. There are many others. I just said the obvious ones. So sometimes there is so different perspective because of that. Or maybe it reflects the perspective. American perspective on India has been, like you said, in getting India independence, setting up the system, all that, and many other things maybe even imposed, but accepted and complied with, is obvious. Is Indian perspective in America, well, I think in general, like you say, that some of us live here for many, many years, is obvious, the public understand better, like we were talking about Thoreau and others who were very interested in this and their influence. But is the government track is able to communicate the Indian perspective through American government? Is that something like that I'd like to know?
Yeah, I think it's a very valid point that you are making. I think that will come by increased. You see, even if we think that our diaspora population is big, it is really 1% of the American population. We are 3.5 to 4 million. In the United States, it's 350 million. So we are just 1% of the American population. Having said that, our participation in the political process is very, very low. We have just 4 congressmen or women and 1 senator. Forget the national level, even in the state levels, in the state senates and state congress, you hardly see anybody of Indian origin. I think that what you're talking about will only come if the Indian American community starts actively participating in the political processes here. And they get involved and have stake in the communities in which they live. I think unless that happens, what our ability to influence the policy here and make it more India open, India centric, India friendly, that will not happen. It is happening in many places. We are seeing Indian American are participating in the political process. But I think given the nature of our diaspora, it is the most educated diaspora, it is the most well-to-do diaspora, most influential in terms of jobs that they occupy. But if you have to influence government, you have to participate in the political process. You see, in the corporate world, our people are influential. Many top US corporations are headed by Indians. But in the government, it is not. You don't have a single governor of Indian origin. You have only 1 senator. You don't have any major cabinet. No cabinet position after Nikki Haley resigns end of this month. There will be no cabinet position held by any Indian origin person. So these are all factors I think are important. And there are processes in place. A lot of people are talking about it, and there is a lot of support that is coming forward. I think in the coming years that will change. Once that changes, then what you are saying will become much more practical to do.
I was more interested in what Indian government is doing through government to bring Indian perspective. I just told a lot of opposites. There are a lot of opposites in many other areas, including, for example, India.
No, I understand what you. So that is one government to government. For instance, our Pakistan policy has been very successful. For many years we have been trying to tell the United States that Pakistan is not what it says, and only now we see this change. And you see where Pakistan has gone today. And I wish the world had realized it 20, 30 years back. then we would not have had 9/11. We would not have these horrors of terror in Afghanistan and in other parts of the world, which is all exported from Pakistan. So it has taken a lot of hard work on our part to convince the United States and the West that Pakistan is an exporter of terrorism. So that is one gain. We have also been influential in the turnaround that has happened in the relationship. We talk to the United States. We have been there is constant dialogue on counterterrorism, on some of the other issues. Nowadays United States has gone back on the Paris climate accord, but there was a lot of discussion during the Obama administration with the United States, and we were partners in arriving at the. If you remember the pictures of President Obama sitting with President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi, those pictures from Paris, the kind of role that India played was very constructive. Now the United States has withdrawn from the Paris Accord, but that doesn't mean that that work will not be recognized. A lot of hard work has gone. In other areas also continuous dialogue is going on. There are 50 bilateral mechanisms of dialogue. I just mentioned one or two, but there are, and in many fronts dialogue, in high technology dialogue is happening, in higher education, and in many other areas dialogue is happening with the United States. Thank you. Sir.
Vijay.
Just I'm talking about the cultural exchange that's happening. I mean, growing up in the 90s, I remember when the media opened up, the Indian psyche kind of opened up to the cultural culture of United States. But recently I feel like there's an opposite, there's hunger for Indian culture, and you mentioned yoga, that being one. Is there some initiative from the Indian government to kind of, I don't know if export would be the right word, but to push this culture, which I think the US is kind of open to?
Yeah, I think what you're saying is very true. But one advantage we have is this the presence of the diaspora. That you are all our cultural ambassadors. So in many other countries that I have served in, we see that most of the cultural exchange happens at the government level. Government sends one cultural delegation and the other government sends. In the United States, it's not needed. The amount of cultural exchange that is happening, around the celebration of Diwali and Holi and our national days, all our top artists, all our community functions, whether it is Bengali convention or Gujarati convention or Odia convention, they are absolutely full with our cultural ambassadors and artists. So I believe the scope for government intervention here is limited. We can't do more than what reasonable limits. But tremendous exchanges every day. At least I am inundated with invitations to attend either Kavita Krishnamurti's singing or L. Subramanian's violin or some other artist and Bharatnatyam. And in every community there are classes on Bharatnatyam and Odissi and music and Sanskrit and Hindi. So I think the cultural scene is very rich, and the diaspora is in itself playing a huge role. So I personally would not want too much of government intervention, because government intervention will mean that some artists which the government selects will come, and you don't want them. You want somebody more energetic and popular and who will allow you to sell tickets. So I am very wary of this government, beyond the point government role. But that doesn't mean we are not doing. We are setting up a cultural center in Washington. In our consulate, we have a small cultural footprint. We do classes of yoga, Hindi, Sanskrit, Bharatnatyam and Odissi, and we bring cultural delegations. In fact, if you want, Professor Gupta, next time a cultural troupe comes from India, we could send them here. We could organize performances in your auditorium or in your community. So I'll be very happy to work with you on that. And we support a lot of cultural groups when they come to us through artists. So that is happening. But I believe that the non-governmental track to exchange is enormous, and we should know how to tap into that. If you see our Facebook, there is a Friends of Indian Consulate group there. You can visit there. You will see a lot of information is there on what all is happening. Sir.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. Could you shed some more light on why it took the United States so long to see Pakistan for what it is?
Yeah, I think I alluded to it. Initially it was the Cold War. So Pakistan, the U-2 flights were based out of Peshawar. They used to fly over the Soviet Union. So, Pakistan was geopolitically or geographically or strategically located. Then when the approach to China happened, again it was through Pakistan. Pakistan played a role because China and Pakistan have a common, they are good friends because of their relationship with India. So the US approach to China happened to Pakistan. We all know about the Kissinger visit to Pakistan, to China. Then what happened was the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. So the war in Afghanistan was fought with the help of the jihadi groups and the Pakistani army and with the support of Pakistan. So the Afghan story has still continued, the mess continues. So again, then 9/11 happened. Again, the 9/11 was planned out of Pakistan and Afghanistan. And then, we went in to sort out that mess. That mess has continued. Okay. So at least the United States believe that Pakistan is important to solve that mess. But only now we are realizing it is creating the mess. So how will it solve it? So that realization is there now. But unfortunately, the recognition of the problem is there. The knowledge of the solution is not there. What to do, how to deal with it. Because they will go back to blackmailing you that if you don't do this, we will commit suicide. So that reverse blackmailing is happening actually in international conditions. So we know the problem, but I don't think all of us know the solution, how to sort it.
Question may be irrelevant in particular stage, but I'm informed that you may be the right person. So my question is that right now in India, the news media is taking a very big part in politics and economics, everything. So do you think that this news media can make a big impact on the foreign relationship as well, or they know the limitation some point? I mean, the United States and India relationship may get hampered in future because of this news media? That is my question. Because sometimes they are trying to distort some of the newses, which is making a very big impact on society.
I will answer it in parts. One thing we have to understand, normally the media is not interested in foreign policy. So if you look at the American media, hardly any foreign policy coverage is there.
Right.
And similar is the case with India, that there is hardly any interest in foreign policy. So media basically is inward looking, domestic policy. So that is true for most countries, and it's true for India, it's true for the United States. In India, I believe foreign policy matters of only 3 countries get reported in the media: China, Pakistan, and United States. So anything happens in New York, in Manhattan, I get calls from India before I even know it has happened. So that is the kind of interest that is there. And I'm not joking, this is real. So that is one thing which I did. Secondly, the role of media, it is a very complex question. It is not only to deal with foreign policy. In other aspects of our lives, we have to understand the role that media is playing. We know that there is distortion in the media. We know there is what is now called fake news. We know it exists. But what is the solution? You can't curb media because that would be worse than the problem. So we have to have free media, because media is a watchdog. Media has a role in society. Media is the 4th pillar of democracy. So we have to understand that. We have to respect that. We have to give them the freedom. But because of technology mostly, I think today. Earlier fake news or wrong news would remain confined to the columns of the newspaper, and tomorrow people would forget it. Today it gets transmitted millions of times over WhatsApp and Facebook, etc. So it's a major issue. I don't think I'm equipped to answer it. It's a challenge that societies all over the world face. But I personally feel that the solution is not curbing the media. It is more societal responsibility of how we educate our children, how we respond to situations. Knee-jerk reactions will only heighten the problem. If you know that something is incendiary or something is mischievous, it is incumbent on us on how we react. If we react violently, then the person who did it wins. So I am not sure whether I can answer you properly, but my personal view is that. But I don't think that apart from these three countries, our media takes much interest in anything else.
That was the actual answer, yes. It helped a lot.
We indeed have been so fortunate to have you. And just as a token of appreciation, okay, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our events for today. But please be engaged, please remain engaged, and we will inform you of our next event very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.